When it comes to evangelism, Billy Graham is the be-all end-all. During his 99 years on earth, he became the voice for all Protestants, and his voice traveled long distances, touching many people's lives despite having some controversial views when we look back on it. Born William Franklin Graham Jr. on November 7, 1918, Billy Graham was raised on a dairy farm his father, William Graham Sr., owned and operated. While attending school, Billy showed an interest in reading from an early age. His favorite book to read was Tarzan. He would mimic Tarzan's patented yell, which his father claimed to help lead him to becoming a minister. Billy's father did things his way, and teaching his kids to avoid alcohol was no different. When Billy was 15, his father forced him and his sister to drink beer until they became sick. While this approach was unique, it worked, as Billy never developed a taste for alcohol. Even as a young Christian, Billy's views were considered too worldly for the church, and because of this, was turned down by his local youth group. Billy attended Bob Jones College in 1936, but quickly learned he didn't like the structure and the way classes were taught there, so he transferred to the Florida Bible Institute after only 1 year at Bob Jones. Billy Graham gave his first sermon at Bostwick Baptist Church as a student. Billy always maintained that he received his calling from the Lord on the 18th green of Temple Terrace Golf Club that same year. Billy would often adventure east to the local golf course, eventually taking a canoe across the Hillsborough River to a small island where he would practice preaching to the alligators in the trees. Later on, Billy's secret spot would be turned into a park in his honor. In 1939, Billy Graham was ordained as a minister. He would go on to graduate college with a degree in theology. At this time in his life, Billy ironed out his views on Christianity. While attending Wheaton College, he accepted the Bible as the absolute Word of God. Billy Graham's popularity can be traced back to one of his first sermons. In 1941, at the United Gospel Tabernacle Church, parishioners were so impressed by Billy that they immediately offered him the chance to become the church's pastor, and he did just that. 2 years later, Billy had graduated from Wheaton College with another degree, this time in anthropology. Fresh out of school, Billy was being invited to church after church to preach. So much so that when he heard one of his friends' radio program was going under, he stepped in to take over the radio program with the full financial support of his congregation. January the 2nd, 1944, marked the re-debut of the radio program Songs in the Night, led by Billy himself. With his popularity continuing to rise, he immediately became the frontman for the evangelical movement. In 1948, in a hotel room in Modesto, California, Billy and his team established the ethical codes of modern evangelism. This code was called the Modesto Manifesto and guided evangelicals on rules such as how to collect offerings, refusing to work with churches against evangelism, and the requirement that no evangelical be seen in public with a woman unless it was his wife. Billy hadn't even reached 30 years of age when he founded modern evangelism. So what made Billy Graham such an influential figure in the religious world? Two things: his crusades and his ability to use technology in his favor. The first Billy Graham crusade was held in September of 1947 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. 6,000 people were there to see Billy Graham. Billy and his team would rent a large venue, preach the gospel, and invite people to come forward and pray. It was an instant hit. 2 years later, Billy took his crusade to Los Angeles, where he put up revival tents like the old Appalachian preachers of the 19th and early 20th centuries. This crusade would become Billy Graham's grand opening of sorts to the American people. National media covered the 8-week crusade heavily, and by the end of it, Billy Graham was a superstar. As Billy continued to preach at his crusades, he garnered attention from TV giants. NBC offered him $1 million to appear on television, but Billy turned it down to continue on with his crusades. Billy crusaded around the world, from Madison Square Garden to Russia to Puerto Rico and even to South Africa, where he held the first mixed-race gathering in apartheid South Africa. While there, he preached that apartheid was a sin, which no doubt stirred up sentiments in the region. Billy Graham's crusades lasted from 1947 to 2005, and by the end of it, Billy had preached in 417 crusades, with almost half of them being out of the country. As I already alluded to, Billy had a knack for using technology to preach the gospel and build his brand. In 1950, he created the Billy Graham Evangelical Association, which was essentially the media arm of evangelism. Graham's association ran a weekly radio program, it broadcast television specials, distributed a newspaper, published a magazine, and even founded a film studio. Graham knew that media, whether it be print, TV, or radio, would expand his reach to new heights. Billy Graham's early crusades were segregated. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, as World War II had just ended. But after a few years of this, Billy integrated his services. His first integrated crusade occurred in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1953. As the story goes, Billy tore down the ropes that segregated the crowd and then told security to leave them down or they could have the revival without him. In that same revival, he went on to chastise white people, saying, quote, "We have been proud and thought we were better than any other race, any other people. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stumble into hell because of our pride," end quote. Graham's integration of his crusades failed to catch any national attention until he appointed black ministers to his crusade committee in New York. In 1957, Billy Graham invited Martin Luther King Jr. to speak at his crusade in New York. Over 2 million people gathered in multiple New York locations to hear the duo preach. Graham had met MLK a couple years earlier during the Montgomery bus boycott, and in the years since, the two became close friends, according to Billy. They were such close friends that MLK allowed him to call him Mike, which was only reserved for MLK's closest of friends. Graham was even known to advise MLK until his assassination in 1968. As is normal, Billy Graham and Martin Luther King's relationship would go through many tough times, as the civil rights movement was in full force. In 1958, Billy Graham was introduced at one of his crusades by a segregationist governor. MLK took exception to this betrayal and wrote Graham a strongly worded letter. This one appearance Graham made with a segregationist made it impossible for MLK to preach in the Deep South with Billy Graham. MLK and Graham would go back and forth over the next couple of years, taking turns castigating each other for their opinions. In 1963, Graham posted bail for MLK during the Birmingham movement. Billy would then go on to host multiple integrated crusades in Birmingham after both the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1964 and the violence in Selma in 1965. As a religious figure, Billy knew there would come a time when politics would be forced upon him. Graham was a lifelong registered Democrat, but tried his best to stay out of politics as much as he could, at least publicly. Behind the scenes, he tried to stifle Kennedy's campaign because he didn't want a Catholic running the country. Later, he would befriend Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon, and would eventually be given a personal audience with 12 consecutive presidents. Outwardly, Billy Graham condemned the religious right, always saying that Jesus had no political party. But in reality, he did his fair share of moving pieces behind the scenes. Now, it's time to get into some of Billy Graham's beliefs and opinions. Billy Graham opposed most abortions, but supported legal options in the cases of rape, incest, and danger to the life of the mother. Graham also had a history of anti-Semitic views, specifically in conversations with then-President Richard Nixon. Graham was caught on tape saying that Jews controlled the media and planned how to do something about that with Nixon. He was also caught on tape in 1973, referring to Jewish journalists as, quote, "the synagogue of Satan," end quote. While Billy was busy traveling with his crusades, the larger Christian population was criticizing him for his opinion that all denominations should work together for Christ. Many hardliner Christians claimed his views were too inclusive. Imagine that. Just like many Christians' views on women today, Graham believed that the pinnacle of womanhood was a housewife without an education. He believed in the Bible trope so devoutly that he refused to allow his daughters to receive higher education. And last but not least, let's talk about homosexuality. Graham is on record claiming homosexuality is a sin and a sinister form of perversion. During the AIDS epidemic, he alluded to the disease being a judgment from God, which he later retracted. By all accounts, Graham avoided this subject moving forward, and when asked about it later in his life, he simply said homosexuality is a sin just like pride is a sin. In 2012, Billy Graham and his son tried to ban same-sex marriage in North Carolina. Billy Graham died on February 21st, 2018, at his home in Montreat, North Carolina, at the age of 99. Graham became the fourth private citizen to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol. He was buried at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte, North Carolina. The life of Billy Graham was one of celebrity and power. Through preaching the gospel, he was able to influence an entire group of people into a new form of worship. He paved the way for the big Joel Osteen-type megachurches we see today, and is the perfect example of a stereotypical televangelist.